All right. Well, we're here on another episode of The Tower, and I got special guest Tarik LaCour. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Taking time out of his beginning of second semester stuff. I'm sure you've got plenty to do to talk a little Longhorn football and other sports.
Yep. There's always time for sports.
It's
That's what's
all yeah.
really that's all that's really important. What
It,
really matters in the end, other
that's
than
what keeps us going.
yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to put breaking news up there, and I knew you probably had a thought on this. Bill O'Brien hired as OC at
Uh,
Ohio State. Um, ah.
I I really don't understand that one. The, the the main point would be I think this is kind of an overreaction. Ryan Day has been the play caller there for what? When did he get the job? Was that
Oh my
2018 or the
gosh.
2019 season?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds about
2019
right.
season. So that's what, 5 seasons he's been there? Yeah, and he's been the play caller. He's had very good offenses. He's had quarterbacks go in the first round. He's obviously trained CJ Stroud from the ground up. So that's not really the problem. And then Bill O'Brien obviously didn't do well in the NFL. He, even though the Alabama offenses were successful while he was there, I think that was more Saban containing things than Bill O'Brien making things better. They certainly took a step back once Sark and Lane left. So I don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Well,
That
and if yeah, he
that
caught a he Dave
that's just
was under a lot of heat this year. More than he's ever been, I would say. And
mhm.
so, the first step is always before you're on the complete hot seat is to replace your coordinator. So interesting hire in that regard to try and stop the bleeding and appease people and hopefully turn things around.
Especially when their problem is about to leave anyway, and Jim Harbaugh likely going to the NFL. So I don't. This seems like a huge overreaction to me,
Harbaugh and a lot of his players probably too.
and probably his defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I expect Mentor to go with him wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. But anyway, I just thought I'd get your comments on that. And speaking of that, one of the first things we wanted to talk about was just kind of the Sugar Bowl and beyond. Your thoughts on Michigan, Washington. I mean, I just thought Washington was the better team against us, and they were certainly not the better team against Michigan. I mean, it's as simple as that. And um, a lot's happened after that game with Saban retiring, and then DeBoer headed to Alabama, and then the mass exodus of players, which we'll talk about some of the portal stuff. But what are your thoughts on all the chaos that's happened since the national title and the Sugar Bowl?
Well, chaos is a good thing for college football. It's what makes it interesting and makes it unpredictable. Makes it fun. Starting with the Sugar Bowl, Michael Penix played the game of his life. Make and the receivers played a great game, making every catch and every contested catch. And then they came back down to earth against Michigan, with Michigan having a better pass rush, especially on the edges,
They
than
did.
Texas did, and having a better secondary overall than Texas did. They defended them a lot better. I was kind of amazed that there were some, obviously the pass rush was getting to Penix, but there were some throws that were made that just were easily caught against Texas that weren't caught against Michigan. And
Right.
then, well, I've sadly rewatched the Sugar Bowl a few times, and it hurts more every time.
Oh
But
man.
after the first watch, I noticed I didn't think okay, Texas's secondary was the weak part of their defense the entire year. We all knew that. But I don't think the secondary played horribly. I think that the wide receivers just made plays where Ryan Watts or someone was covering the person pretty as almost as well as you could, and they just made the catch. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? Some days it's just not your day.
Yeah.
So that was that. But overall, given the mistakes that Texas made and the fact that they were really outplayed in many ways on offense, to have the chance to win the game at the end, I think it bodes well for Steve Sarkisian and and then on the acres. As for the national championship game, it wasn't. It was just kind of sad. But after like the second quarter, it was just a rout, and that's
Yeah,
not what
you
that's not.
kind of knew who was in control of that game.
I think that the last good national championship game we've seen was Alabama versus Georgia, but a lot of these national championship games have just been blowouts.
That was the Tua game.
Yeah.
um, yeah,
No, no,
it
no.
just
What was
y-
it?
y-
No,
what?
no, no, no. That was the not that. Well, there have been more than one Alabama Georgia game. The one where Georgia won their first national championship. That was
Oh, okay, okay.
Bryce's Heisman season.
Yeah, as far as Michigan, Washington, you could just tell early on who was in control of that game, and for the most part, the Texas game. I mean, they've got to start those games earlier anyway. So it's late, 11:30 or whatever. And I look over at my son and we're watching the game and Whittington catches that ball and I kind of look at him and he looks at me and like, really? We how in the world are we at this point? But that's a credit to the team. And it's a team that's a team culture, a team dynamic that we wouldn't have had 2 years ago. We'd have lost that game by 3 touchdowns easy, and 2-3 years ago. But this team had a ton of heart, and even though they were not playing their best game, and Washington was arguably playing the perfect game, um, they never quit and found themselves really with 3 to 4 plays from being in the national title against Michigan, which I think would have been a hell of a matchup.
It would have been, and it was. It's truly a testament to the team that they always keep fighting to the end. There's no quit in that. There was no quit in that team. So overall, while you're not happy to lose a game, you can still have your head held high and get ready for this coming year. With what's going on in the transfer portal, I think Texas has a chance to perhaps be a better team this coming year than they were in 2023.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. I think that moral victories, you don't really take solace in those, but you do come away going, this program's in pretty good shape. So the first thing I was going to, put up there is, well, let me backtrack. DeBoer to Alabama. Are those fans going to give him a chance? Because what you've seen, I think, already is players at Alabama taking less NIL money to play for Saban. Saban was the it factor, and they were willing to do a lot of things that they may not be willing to do for another coach. And will the Bama fans, give him the opportunity to, to be the guy there? So,
well, first, I want to say kind of a thank you to Nick Saban for giving college football 16 years of just something incredible to watch, even though it hurt Texas at times, obviously. And we don't want to get into the Mac Brown, Nick Saban stuff.
no, yeah,
But, congratulations on a great career and things like that. As far as Kalen DeBoer, I think he's of the people that were in the running for the job. That was Lanning, Norvell, Sark, and DeBoer. I think it was those four.
those are the main, yes.
Those are the main four. I think DeBoer was probably the best pick of the four. Norvell, I think it's just a better fit at Florida State. Sark, obviously, I won at Texas. I think Sark could have done well there, but I think DeBoer has a really good chance to do really well there.
Yeah, I do too.
His personality and his humility, I think, fit well coming after Saban, because you're going to need it following the greatest coach of all time. As far as the fans, it's so hard to know, but I don't think that Alabama will be bad next year. I think they'll still be pretty good.
Oh yeah.
There's still a ton of talent there. Obviously, losing Caden Proctor and Caleb Downs is not good. And of course, losing Dallas Turner to the NFL and some others to the NFL. But still a ton of talent on that roster. And I think DeBoer's system will translate well to what Jalen Milroe can do. And DeBoer can also tweak it. He's been an offensive coordinator, lots of different places. So I think they'll do fine. If they expect to always be in the national championship hunt every year, I think that's not going to happen anymore. There's just not many coaches who can do that.
No, if you look at his stats, it's crazy. What he was able
we've
to
had
do.
10 years of the 4-team playoff that's coming to an end. Saban was in there 8 times. That's just incredible. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be repeated anytime in the near future. I think that
Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. So yeah.
Well, let's look at talking about portal and people, and thank you to everybody watching. If you got a question, shoot it out. But you and I had talked a little bit about kind of portal additions, and this is kind of what we have. I starred the 2 that have been crystal balled or predicted to Texas, which is Jabbar Muhammad and Amari Niblack.
That's right.
With the tight end from Bama. They have not committed, but I know they're taking visits and they've been predicted. But looking at the additions, especially in the wide receiver area, as much as we were losing, Sark and them have done a crazy good job and have been on fire with putting depth back into a position room that was really losing a lot.
Yep. And this is just kind of a funny thought. So both Niblack and Jabbar Muhammad played against Texas this year and both played well. So you're thinking, oh yeah, Sark noticed that and said like, hey, just in case you ever into the portal, let me circle that guy's name there, because Niblack scored against Texas in the Alabama game this year. Jabbar Muhammad obviously defended well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I think it's been really impressive what he's been able to do, bringing in this type of talent. As far as let's start on the offensive side, this might be with Bond, Jonte Cook projected to be another starter, and Golden as your 3 starting wide receivers. This is probably going to be the fastest offense. And let's assume Niblack is also the tight end. This is probably going to be the fastest offense Texas has ever had. Just speed everywhere, positionless wide receivers that can be moved around like chess pieces. So very excited about that. It's good, but also sad that you have guys like Andrew Makuba and potentially Muhammad coming on board now, because you're thinking, oh, if we just had these guys in the Washington game, that would have made a big difference.
Well,
one of the big problems that you saw against Washington, but we had seen it all year, was the secondary didn't have a ton of speed. And
right. You're exactly right.
Going against those types of wide receivers, you really needed to be able to run with those guys. And how many times did we see guys just running wide open?
But I didn't list Bond's position there, but he's a safety as well.
He's a wide receiver.
Okay. Is he a DB?
No. Bond is a what?
Yeah,
Bond's wide receiver from Bama.
What am I thinking? I'm thinking of the other DB from Bama that was in the portal. That is not.
Oh, the one that went to A&M.
Okay. Where that's who I was thinking of. But Bond quickly went into wide receiver 1 for us, and I think is going to provide Bond, Bolden, and then Golden, and you can't make up, all these rhyming names, but yep. I think that's going to take some pressure off of Jonte Cook having to be the guy as such a young receiver. I think it's actually going to help him. And I saw some stats the other day with
breaking news. Niblack just committed to Texas.
Did he? Okay, so we can take the star off there. Way to go, Tarik. All right.
My phone was buzzing. I was like, something must have happened.
Well, and I saw somebody say if Niblack commits, that Gunnar Helm is going to leave, and I don't think so. I don't. I think we use enough 2 tight end sets that I don't see that happening. but
I don't think Helm is going anywhere. I think he, first of all, loves the university. He's all bought in, but also the way he's used is going to be very different than Niblack. Helm is a all around tight end, a very good blocker. Really, he has really good hands.
Yep.
He's very slippery. I think you'll see a lot of. You're going to see a lot of variations within the offense. You're going to see a lot of two tight end sets still, but maybe what will happen will be you can put Niblack kind of in the slot, but have Helm in line as a true tight end and just giving lots of different looks. We saw a lot of this with Sark, how he used two tight ends when he was at Alabama. He had Jaleel Billingsley, who was the center tight end, who was split out a lot, and then they had the other tight end. I think it was Vogel, who was their inline tight end. So I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. I think both will play a lot and be very.
Yeah, I also saw another thing where he had Waddle and Jerry Judy and four good receivers that came out at the same time, and their stats were still great. So he's got a track record of being able to manage a stable of great receivers. So I think we're going to be in good shape.
Also, what I like about Bond, even though he's not super tall, he's a very good at high pointing the ball, as you obviously saw him winning the game.
Auburn saw that one.
That was just an incredible catch. It was first of all, great throw from Jalen Milroe, but that was an incredible catch because Bond was covered and he jumped very, very high and had to come back down in bounds. So he knows what he's doing.
It had to be thrown perfectly. It was in the right spot. He had to high point it, and everything was done right, and the rest is history. But he definitely saved Bama, because I thought they were cooked that night. But
it's looking like Alabama has become a feeder school for Texas at this point. With how many people they've gotten, got Niblack, he gotten Bond, so very important.
Yeah, and I want to say that the Porter, the lineman, was either projected, like Ohio State was where they were looking at for him, but I don't know if he's committed officially.
Caden Proctor, you mean?
Proctor, was it Proctor? The lineman, the 5-star lineman.
He's going back home to Iowa. He was committed to them, and then he flipped on signing day to Saban. But now that Saban's not there, he's probably going back home.
Okay. I looked I don't know, earlier this evening, and I saw something about Ohio State, but I hadn't seen a definitive, but I'd heard Iowa as well. So either way, it looks like he's going Big Ten.
Ohio State is in it for Caleb Downs. It's between Ohio State and Georgia for him.
Okay.
So they depends. I think obviously Caleb Downs is one of the best players in college football. He can do well wherever he goes, but if Georgia doesn't get him, it's not like they don't have 3 other 5-star safeties. So,
and Downs is he's number 2 for Bama. He's the one I was thinking of earlier,
right.
And I had not heard. I knew Georgia was one of the main players for him. So, I mean, we got a huge get with Trey Moore out of UTSA as an edge rusher, but we definitely still need some defensive line help in the portal. So.
Sadly, that's the hardest place to get help in the portal is defensive line. They hardly ever go in the portal.
Yeah, and with if Harbaugh takes the Chargers job, or which is the rumor, or definitely NFL, I think he's headed there. It's possible we may see some guys later from Michigan D-line in the portal. So. Yeah. You never know. I wanted to get your thoughts on something else I saw. In fact, I pulled up about 4 things because they were all. You're starting to get all these 23 season 24 first year SEC predictions with quarterbacks having found their place in the portal. So I was going to get your thoughts on that. So I've got those pulled up. But first, what we wanted to talk about was kind of our schedule. And Let me get it going here. Here we go. You know, at the more I look at it, the more I think it is a doable schedule. The more I look at it, and the more I look at where we're shoring up our team in the portal. Obviously, at the big house in Ann Arbor is not an easy place to play, but we're not going to be playing the same Michigan team that just won the national title either. So, what would be the 2 or 3 roadblock games you see on that schedule?
Well, I think these are kind of obvious, but Michigan and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Michigan, even though they will likely lose Jim Harbaugh, and I think they'll lose like 18 starters or something like that. It's a ridiculously high amount. Uh, it's just going to Ann Arbor. It's going to be packed. It's the biggest stadium in college football. It's a hard place to play. Sherrod Moore, assuming he's the head coach, he's been in big games before, beating Ohio State. So he knows how to prepare for that. But I expect Texas to be the better team, and I think they will come out of that with a win on September 7th.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, it doesn't really matter the rest of the season what the teams look like. I just don't bet on that game. It's
It's
if
like the A&M game.
2015 didn't teach anyone just not to bet on the Red River Shootout, nothing will, because that 5-7 team somehow beat one of the better Oklahoma teams that we've seen in the past 10 years in that 2015 team.
Well,
And
and that's another game we looked up and should have won that at the end.
yeah, I mean there were a lot of similarities to in the two losses, how they kind of came about, how having the chance to win at the end. But I guess flipping it, it's in the Oklahoma game, the defense needed to stop. In the Washington game, offense needed a touchdown, and both times weren't able to come through with that. But let's just start with this one by one. I think Colorado State, that's a good way to kick off the season. I think they'll be a better start than, say, like a Rice would be. And then you'll have Michigan. Obviously, that'll be a great game. UTSA, I think, is going to be interesting because I really respect Jeff Traylor as a coach. And I think
And
he's
they're
going to
bring
be
it.
they'll bring it, and I'm sure Jeff Traylor's not going to be he'll certainly be remembering that his best player, Trey Moore, is now on the other side playing against him. So they'll have that. UL Monroe, that was Quinn Ewers' first start 2 years ago, and I expect he'll have another great game there. The Mississippi State game will be interesting right before Oklahoma because Jeff Lebby, who was the offensive coordinator of Oklahoma,
Right.
he'll be a very good test for the defense, and obviously that's a very pass-heavy type of thing. So we'll see how far our secondary has come, and if we can get pressure off the edge.
And it'll be interesting to see, does he have the quarterback in Starkville, to run that offense yet? If Will Rogers had stayed, which he might come back because I think he's back in the portal, went to Washington and then is back, but it'll be interesting to see. The one that's going to be crazy in terms of hotel rooms and ticket prices and all, of course, is going to be Georgia. I think, Georgia's going to bring a different team, a Brock Bowers-less team, which I think, he's arguably the best player on that team offensively. But I think that's going to be a big game for us. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that Texas will have played Georgia more than Texas A&M.
One time A&M has played them since they've been. I don't know who they paid off for that one, but
yeah, that's just what the SEC does. They just don't. They're not gonna make themselves beat each other up. That kind of a thing.
Well, that's true, and you're exactly right about the Oklahoma game. That's just one of those games. It doesn't matter. Anybody can beat anybody on that day. That's one of those games. The other one I circle is that A&M game on the 30th.
Mhm.
Um, it's,
I'll be
I
there.
mean,
I'll
it's
be
good.
in
Are
I'll be at
you?
I'll be, back in, at, Kyle Field.
God bless you.
My
Um,
one of my best friends goes to Texas A&M, so,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so long come so it's we've been waiting so long for this, and of course, they stipulated that the first game back had to be there. Um, but I don't
Because
I
the
don't
last
know.
time we played at Kyle Field, it went so poorly.
Well, 11 years they've had to see his kick. Um, you know,
How
but
crazy would it be if the exact same thing happens, but it's Bert Auburn? I mean, it'd just be too funny.
well, I was still waiting for Bert Auburn to kick the field goal, the winning field, to beat Bama. But I was glad that it didn't come down to that. But I just know that A&M game is going to be crazy. The crowd's going to be crazy. Everything's going to be, um, no matter what the records are. I think that game just and you know people have been waiting since Tucker put it through the uprights. All bets are going to be off. Who knows where A&M will be in first year under Elko and where we'll be. I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. Um,
Let me ask you, what did you make of the Elko hire?
um, I thought it was not a bad hire. I thought they kind of got bullied a little bit. That I remember that night when they had basically leaked out that Stoops, was going to get it, and then the uproar, well, it just went nuts. And then before you know it, there's Elko. I think Elko is a solid coach. Um, I think he fits well. Um, he may not be, the recruiter that Jimbo was, but then Jimbo recruited and didn't have the results either. So um, he did well at Duke, but he'd only been there what 2 years. It was his second year at Duke this year, so it's really hard to say long term. But I didn't think it was a bad hire. I don't think it was the splash hire that they were hoping for initially. I think they came out thinking they were going to get whoever they wanted, and I don't think it was as splashy as they wanted. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that Elko is a fire your head coach for $76 million to hire him kind of a thing.
I don't
Um,
think that was their plan.
no, it's also interesting. I mean, now Ross Bjork is no longer at A&M; he's now at Ohio State. So it's such an odd situation to do that. I think in and of himself, Elko is a solid hire. I don't I don't know how much they're really going to improve overall. Obviously, losing a lot of talent to the portal and other things is going to be interesting. Losing Walter Nolan, I think that's a huge loss. Uh, and can Connor Weigman stay healthy?
Mm.
They're going to be running a very different style of offense than that they've been running, and Colin Klein likes to run the quarterback. That's why they went after DJ Lagway really hard. So it's so hard to say. I wasn't, but even more so, I thought maybe what would do, even though he's not himself like the biggest name, is he would get kind of an all-star staff, and I don't feel like he did. It felt very like
He got
Tom
the one.
and Tom
Yeah.
Herman. We hired him in 2016. Oh, it was in the year 2016, but for the 2017 season, when he was hired, and he just basically brought his Houston staff with him. They did get a great strength and conditioning coach, so I will give them tip my hat for that. But I wasn't overwhelmed with the hire or the staff and I don't. And while A&M is obviously a big rival, this isn't the kind of thing that if they had gotten if they had gotten Kalen DeBoer, you'd be like, oh man,
That was the one I was concerned about. Really, was DeBoer. I thought he would fit perfectly. the calling. I'm glad you mentioned it. The Colin Klein hire at OC was puzzling because it's just it was an interesting philosophy. Um, not the person I would have thought, but we'll see. Um, he that's the one thing about Kansas State's offense is they never lit it up. They're always a well coached team, and they always played hard the entire game. But I never got them as an offensive juggernaut. So I thought that was a really interesting hire. Speaking of, you asked about the Elko hire. I saw this ranking of 2024 SEC coaches, and they've got Sark fourth behind Smart, DeBoer, and Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Who I've heard rumors that and I don't know why this would be the case, but that if Harbaugh left, he would be interested in the Michigan job.
Because he's more of a Midwest guy. I think that's the idea.
And so and this was before the national title game, but they've got Elko eighth behind Kiffin. So I thought it was interesting that kind of where DeBoer they're giving him a lot of respect in these rankings.
Well, he took a Washington team that was 4-8 when he took over, and
with a lot of 2 and 3 stars. Yeah.
Won 11 games his first year and made the national championship the second year. So he's won everywhere he's been. So it's hard to disagree with that. Could you show that list again?
Yeah.
Lost it. Okay. Yeah, I would put Kelly at 3. I think he's a very good coach. The problem for Kelly,
I don't like Kelly, but I do think he's a solid coach.
The problem is, and this has nothing to do with him, I think the hardest job in America is LSU. It just seems like every coach there that is always on the hot seat, even when they're winning. So, yeah.
I've got a brother and sister-in-law that both went to LSU, so I've got to be very, very careful. But no, I think you're right. It's as demanding a fan base as Texas or Bama.
They love their football down there, so
they love their football. They love their tailgating. They love those Tigers. And I'm sorry because of I had a ticket to the game in Baton Rouge for the return trip, and then COVID messed that all up. So
yeah, I think Texas would have won that game, and that might have saved Herman's job another year. So maybe it's a good thing that all happened.
Yeah, let's just say that was a win. Look where they have Lebby. I thought that was interesting, and maybe that's because he's unproven.
Well, he's never been a head coach at this point.
So I'd go to the Vanderbilt game just to be able to go to Nashville. But that being said, how do you think we stack up, Tarik, next year? Do you think, given the recruiting that Sark has done since he's been at Texas, what he's done in the portal this year, I feel like we're in a solid position heading into the SEC. And I know you definitely have to be big up front on your lines. I think we need some help on the defensive line to be ready. I think we're deeper on the up. There we go. What do you think? I think we're in a better shape than people thought we might be.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, my opinion of this is very different on January 18th than it would have been January 2nd. The reason I say that, one, is because you'll never have to go through Nick Saban again. That in of itself is a huge okay. So
a lot of people are saying that.
Well, he doesn't lose very often. So he has more first round draft picks and losses at Alabama, which is just one of those insane Nick Saban stats. But I think that if healthy, Texas should be in the SEC championship game. I think they're good enough to be in the SEC championship game next year. and a playoff berth.
I don't think that's out of the question. I definitely think with the 12
Especially with
team,
12 spots. With 12 spots, I
yeah,
think Texas should be back in the mix.
I think it will be considered a failure if we're not in that part at least. Um, Player on offense and defense next year to help set that's going to set the tone and lead the charge into the SEC. Who do you got? Give me one guy for the offense, one guy for the defense.
Well, on defense, I'm going to go Anthony Hill.
And you can even do two. I'll even allow two if you need.
Okay, I'm going to say Anthony Hill, and I think because I just love the way this guy plays.
Oh yeah,
Derek Williams. He, you saw a big difference in the second half when he was in versus the Washington game than beforehand. I think he just got great instincts, plays the ball well, great tackler.
yeah. He's a physical safety.
And I think with Barron coming back and Makuba together, that'll really free him up to do what he needs to do. On offense, I'm going to say I think Quinn Ewers will have a Heisman caliber type season.
Yeah.
So
if you had to put a second offensive guy, who would that be?
I'll say two others, C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue. I think they're going to have very light boxes with the type of receivers we're going to have.
Yeah. I think Sark's master plan. I think we were actually a year ahead of what he was expecting, probably this year. I think he's slowly getting those pieces in place to run the full gamut of his offense. And, mad respect to all the receivers we're losing and Brooks, and wish him the best getting healthy and in the pros, but we're not dropping down on talent. And so, we've got the horses there to do things, to do some good things next year. That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. In fact, you talked about Quinn as your guy. They list, these are the top college football's top quarterbacks, and they've got him fourth behind Carson Beck, Sanders, and Dylan Gabriel, which I just wanted to put that up there because I thought that was interesting.
The only one I'd have Ewers no less than two. I think he's better than Gabriel and Sanders.
Yeah,
and frankly, I think he's the best quarterback of this list. The person I think is way too low is actually Jackson Dart. I think he's really good.
Yeah, to be last on that list was kind of surprising. We got Will Howard sixth at Ohio State, and then Milroe fifth. So anyway, I just wanted to show that because I thought that was kind of an interesting. I think there's still room for Quinn to prove some stuff, and he has an golden opportunity to have a great year and be the number one pick, or at least the top QB1 coming out.
Actually, I think the person he'll have a person on his team who will be competing with him to be the number one pick in Kelvin Banks.
You get, yeah, and it's hard, isn't it hard to believe we're already at Kelvin Banks at getting ready to go to the NFL? It's like, no.
Kelvin Banks is so good, and his best football is ahead of him. So,
yeah, and I don't think we're going to. I think his best football is going to be in the NFL. But my goodness, that guy has come in from the get-go and not only held his own but dominated really. And so I think you bring up a very good point. I think that he's going to go really high, particularly if he has the year in the SEC, that he probably will. So I've got some take it or leave it questions for you. And so I just want to hear your thoughts on these. Number one, Quinn stays healthy all season next year and has his best year yet. take it or leave it?
This should be an easy take it. The reason it's not easy is because Quinn's gotten banged up the last 2 years, but I'm gonna take it. I think in the offseason, Quinn will add more strength to his upper body, and that will help with the injury, things that have lagged him, so also, it looks though in the last few games he's learned how to slide, so that should help too.
Yeah, yeah.
Shouldn't have been a problem considering, like, I park where I park at the East, Campus garage, which is right next to the dish.
Uh-huh.
So, like, when Quinn doesn't slide, it's like, "Quinn, there's a great baseball program right here who can teach you how to do this anytime you want." So,
When he got crunched against Houston and just that was brutal. We're lucky we didn't lose him for the season because that was a massive hit he took. Um, so I hope you're right. I hope you're right that he's got the sliding down. All right. So next one, as good as the wide receiver core was this year, bringing in Adonai Mitchell and pairing him up with Whittington and Worthy, the wide receiver core next year in its own right could be even better.
I will take it, but the reason is because I don't think Sark utilized Jordan Whittington enough. He used him primarily more as a blocker, and I think that the way that Sark will exploit the slot receiver, whether that's and I think you'll see a mix of Bond, Golden, and Cook in the slot. I think that will help whoever the slot is will be better that way. So yes, I will say yes to that.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think yeah, I was going to ask you, why do you think he didn't use Whittington more? And I don't know if it was just a speed thing. All the guy does is catch balls and probably 150%. So I'm not sure sometimes why he didn't go to Whittington more. Just looking at the semifinal game, that catch, that's just that's the type of catches Witt made.
Yep.
But I think you're right. Bond. The speed at receiver is going to be different. I don't think we've ever seen speed like we're going to see next year, which ought to be fun. All right, next one. Arch is called upon to help us win at least 1 or 2 games next year.
I'm going to leave that because I mean I kind of have to, I answered the first one.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I'll have to leave that. As you like this tweet I said earlier this evening,
Right.
it's kind of interesting to me that when we had a true quarterback competition in Casey Thompson and Hudson Card, and then in Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers, that the national media wasn't really talking much about it. But now that Arch Manning is here, it just keeps coming up like, wait a second, didn't Quinn Ewers just lead Texas to their first Big 12 title in 14 years, to their first college football playoff berth, and almost to their first college football playoff win? And his best football is still ahead of him. I mean, people forget he was basically a true freshman when he started at Texas, and he played like a really talented true freshman. Made some mistakes, but also showed you a lot of talent. His second year, thought he played really well when healthy. Obviously, beating Bama on the road, helping put up 34 points. Recall that no one else put up that many points against Alabama, I don't think. So that's a big thing. And obviously, I think even his best game was not the Bama game. It was the Oklahoma game. It was when he started off really, really poorly, but he held his composure, got the team rallied, then had those 27, I think it was, straight completions. So I think Quinn is got the program in great shape, and but if Arch's number is called, I expect him to do well as well.
Yeah, and of course, between X/Twitter and any social media, is Arch is not the kind of guy. They're not the type of family that's just going to take off. I think this is the situation they wanted. They were okay with sitting for a little while, um, and waiting. And I think when it's his time, he's going to be ready. And all we've seen from Quinn was, I mean, massive leap, um, in just quality of play from year one to this year, and I can only see that getting even better next year. So I'll be excited when Arch gets his opportunity. Hopefully he gets some time to get in games this year, but it's not because of an injury to Quinn. So
I think in the first 4 games we will see. I mean, in the UTSA game, Colorado State, ULM, I do expect we'll see a lot of Arch Manning.
yeah, I think you're right. All right, we beat Georgia and Michigan next year, and Georgia and Michigan. Take it or leave it. You're a philosophy guy, so I expect you to put a lot of thought into these.
Okay, so you left out Oklahoma. That would I would definitely say leave that if I had to say to all 3. Uh, 2
I didn't.
makes it a little different. I think Texas should and will beat Michigan, but that's a tough one because there's a real possibility that Georgia, if Caleb Downs goes to Georgia Tech, and with the offensive talent Texas has, it could be the best offense in the country versus the best defense in the country.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Georgia,
He's certainly
Georgia's at home though. Georgia's going to be at home in DKR.
right.
With against what I'm sure will be an even bigger crowd than Alabama, perhaps.
Well, Downs would certainly make that secondary stronger.
Yeah, and they already have a good secondary, so
Yeah.
I'll take it.
See, there's nothing you can be wishy washy. Yeah, it's okay. We're not betting anything on it, so you'll take it. I like that. Because I think it's possible. I can see us going 1-1 against those 2 easily, but I could see us winning both. So, all right, next one. One of the true freshmen makes a significant impact, and if you take it, who is that freshman?
Let's see. I will take it, and I'll say Colin Simmons on the edge. He seems to be the most obvious one. I don't think this is the sign of a developing program as well. A lot of the true freshmen won't need to play a lot. They'll just get to learn, and they will play like within those garbage minutes, which are valuable. But I don't think we'll need one to come in. Like, for example, Texas signed a bunch of good defensive backs, and Xavier Filsaime, Wardell Mack, Santana Wilson.
Really good talent in the secondary.
Yeah, but given that you have Makuba now, you have Barron coming back, you have Gilbo obviously still there. Obviously Malik Muhammad and perhaps Jabbar Muhammad. It doesn't look like you'll need a lot of those guys in the secondary to play.
Which is ideal. You don't want to have to do that,
Yeah. So but I do think Colin Simmons, he's just such a good edge rusher that he'll make some things happen.
Yeah. Do you see him being used a little bit like Hill was this year, maybe?
Not entirely, because Hill is a off-ball backer who can play on the edge versus.
Well, I guess maybe, yeah.
Like the way that they use Hill on the edge, yeah, you could use.
Yeah, just kind of spot, special situation.
You could put Hill and Simmons on the edge in certain situations if it's just getting your fastest edge rushers out there. But I expect Colton Vosick also to have not Vosick, Ethan Burke.
Yeah,
Vosick will play well when he gets a chance too.
Right. Ethan Burke is only going to be getting better, and I tell you, Hill just amazes me. A guy, you forget how big he is, and how well he moves. I don't think I think we've just seen the tip of the iceberg with Anthony Hill.
Yep.
So I think that's only going to get better. Um,
I
all right.
remember. I don't know if you saw this. I said this on Facebook the night of the Alabama game. I just tweeted out, Anthony Hill. I'm so glad you're not a Texas A&M Aggie. So yeah,
Yeah. Whew, that was a good get. I'm glad we got him at the end. So
you can thank Jimbo Fisher for that.
yeah, yeah. Have you ever seen my picture of him made with Jimbo?
I haven't.
Yeah, I just happened to be going on a work related trip. Walk into the um, uh, barbecue, Rudy's barbecue in College Station to grab a bite to eat, and I walk in to the middle of Jimbo's radio show, and it was the night before the board of regents decided to fire him, and so I went up and got this picture with him and threw up the horns, and then I like to think maybe I had that was the last straw, you know, but
That would be. eh, I'll
yeah.
take. I'll believe that.
I think he's doing okay though. I don't feel too bad for Jimbo. I think he's
Um,
going to be all right.
My daughter, who is a year old, will be almost 10 years old when Texas A&M stops paying him.
Yeah, we could all be so lucky to get fired and fall into a pile of money. So
His buyout was $76 million. They hired him originally for $75 million.
right,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
that's
forget what it's like 28,000 a day, something like that.
yeah. Like he literally has money to burn.
Yeah, yeah.
You
All right, last one. Rodney Terry ends up being the right hire for Texas.
know. Oh, I
And this is a tough one because we're at a point totally different team from last year because that was arguably Chris Beard's team.
mhm.
They're going through a spot where you're trying to figure out who they are. They've had two bad losses to West Virginia and UCF. You know, take it or leave it. Right? Terry ends up being the right hire.
Uh, I think I will leave that one. I think Terry was an emotional hire. He had a good run. I tip my hat to him, but I don't think he was the best available candidate for the job. And so, it's not looking great right now. Having said that, these two things can be true at the same time. You cannot be the best available hire. You can have a bad initial first season, but you can end up working out. So this isn't to say that you should fire him now or not give him time. Something that some people on Twitter don't seem to understand. These two things are compatible, but I don't think he was the right hire, and haven't seen anything so far to make me stand off that judgment. Having said that, uh, I guess I have more confidence that he might be the right hire than I do in the Dallas Cowboys bringing back McCarthy for a fifth year. So there you go.
Oh, slam. Okay. Well, we could go on. I think special props to Coach Schaefer and the women's team. If people are down on the men, go watch Madison Booker and the women because they're playing really well. They got a ton of talent. They're trying to figure things out after losing, Rory Harmon for the season. But a lot of talent on that side of the ball. So, Tarik, I cannot thank you enough. For being here. I want to have you back on because if you don't follow Tarik on Twitter, do so because his tweets are always so well thought out and on point. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here and taking the time in the middle of what I know is a busy schedule.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I plan to come back soon.
I'd love it.
Probably
All right.
probably during spring training, which will be here before we know it. I mean, it's what today's the 18th, so And we know that the spring game is on the 20th of
20th,
April.
20th, right?
20th of April. So
Yeah, that'll be here before we know it. Yeah,
yes,
and
early March.
I have no doubt that my season ticket renewals will be coming in the mail very soon. They're always really good about getting those in the mail quickly. So,
Well, I would renew the first day because those aren't going to be there very long now that we're going to the SEC.
yeah, you're right. All right, Tarik, you take care. See you soon.
Welcome.